Hello, and welcome to another episode of I Just Want to Be Included. My name is Veronica Olson, and today, Lisa and I have some fun reminiscing about playing with Barbie as kids and our reflections on the Barbie movie. This is intended to be a lighter and fun episode. Once we started reflecting on the movie, we realized how relevant these topics are to our podcast. Gender roles, identities, and inclusion are a huge part of this movie. You may not like or agree with everything you hear on this podcast, and that's okay. The goal of this podcast is to bring humanity and different viewpoints to difficult topics. As always, anything said in this podcast is based on personal thoughts, opinions, and experiences. Nothing said in this podcast should be taken as professional advice. Everyone is different. Every situation is different. Please always seek professional advice in your community for whatever issues you or your child might be dealing with. Enjoy the episode. So today I have Lisa here in person, which is awesome.
Yay!
We haven't seen each other since
2018.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yep.
So I am so excited to have her in town and to be able to hang out with her.
Me too.
And we got to go see the Barbie movie together.
We did, and it was great.
Yes, we thoroughly enjoyed that. And so we thought we'd spend an episode just kind of having fun and talking about Barbies in general, because it was a huge part of our childhood, and also the movie, because it definitely impacted us. We've had a lot of conversation about it. So we thought we'd just have some fun and talk about that. We both had Barbies. We loved Barbies.
Loved Barbies.
Loved Barbies. Played Barbies together all the time.
Barbie was the thing that was mainly on my Christmas wish list until I was about 15 years old. And Barbie was a doll that we could use our imaginations with, and we could dream about being adults with townhouses and the camper and all the different toys that we had.
Yeah, and we would spend the night at each other's houses, and it would be a Barbie night.
Yep.
It was loading up a huge bag full of stuff.
We had duffel bags.
Yes.
The size that we could fit into ourselves.
I don't know that rolling suitcases existed yet.
No, too bad.
I know. But duffel bags full of accessories and dolls, and we'd go spend the night somewhere, and that's all we did. Our whole sleepover revolved around setting up our own little Barbie worlds.
We'd have houses, and my mother sold Avon, so we had Avon box tops that we could use as like a elevated area for the house. So that was neat. The dining room was always elevated.
Yeah. And, some of my treasured toy as a kid was getting the Barbie camper van for my birthday one year.
Oh, yeah.
And that was awesome. And I remember unwrapping that and just being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have this. Even, I don't know, what was I, 8 or 9 or something? I even knew, this is expensive. How do I have this? I knew that, this was not a normal gift. And looking back, it was probably a combination gift for my grandparents and my parents. But I loved that thing. If I had it now, I would still pull it out and play with it. Unfortunately, it's gone, long gone.
Yeah.
But I had that, and I had the McDonald's playset, which was so much fun. The department store. Mm-hmm. And Crystal Barbie. I had Peaches and Cream Barbie.
I was so jealous of the Peaches and Cream Barbie because her dress was so beautiful.
And 80s.
Working class Barbie dolls did not have pretty dresses like that. They had a few nice outfits for occasional evenings out, but that was about it.
Yeah, you were saying they're more factory worker Barbie.
Factory worker Barbie, yeah, that's a line we should try to sell. It's talk to Mattel.
Absolutely, especially in Detroit with all those factory workers, the women that were on the assembly lines in the 80s, for sure.
A little UAW hat.
Yeah, give them some representation. Absolutely. But we really did have fun with it. And we were talking about why Barbie was so much fun. to play with. And Lisa mentioned already that it was because we could pretend to be adults living in an adult world.
Yeah.
And Barbie had it all, man.
Yeah, she opened possibilities that, the movie starts out with girls playing with baby dolls instead of Barbie dolls. And the baby dolls kind of just showed girls what it was like to be a mother. But Barbie showed girls what it was like to be an adult and to be somebody that was independent and had a great job. I mean, she was an astronaut and a doctor, and what else?
Oh, she's been
Veronica.
everything.
What else was she, Veronica?
She's been everything, but she's also had a Corvette. She's had a camper van. She's had a Jeep with a, trailer in the back for her horse. I mean,
Well, yeah, she's a horse person. What are those people are called? Equestrian? I don't know what the word is.
But she had some nice things. She had a home office. She had a home gym. Like, she had it all, man. And just as a kid, to be able to picture having an adult life with all these really cool things, some of them nicer than what, we had in our homes.
Right.
was really cool as a kid.
Yeah, yeah. And the Barbie movie was neat, though, because, we talked earlier today about Barbie not being the thing that caused our society to be focused on what it focuses on, but a reflection of what our society focuses on. And that's the perfectionism that we need to have in our bodies, or that we want to have in our bodies, rather. We don't need to be perfect, but the society tells us that we should be perfect. And we talked about the dichotomy of being a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned some really, really great stuff when we were talking, Veronica.
Yeah, I really love that speech America Forever gives towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
She nailed it with women kind of having this feeling like, well, I've got to be this, and I've got to be this, and I've got to be this, and I've got to be that. And
right.
It never feels good enough. It never feels like enough. You never feel like you're doing the right thing, that you're being what you're supposed to be.
Right.
It just never feels like enough. And Barbie in her little world doesn't understand that, right? She's in her nice little world. And it isn't until she goes to the real world and she's like, oh, what's this? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. There are people unhappy. There are people treating me in a way that I don't want to be treated.
Right.
It's a whole new world for her.
Well, and as we talked about too, when we were talking earlier today, Ken was created as like a sidekick for Barbie because, as we mentioned earlier, Ruth Hadler, the lady that invented Barbie, for her daughter to have a plaything, Mattel was the company, of course, that produced Barbie. And they got a lot of letters from people saying Barbie can't be a single woman. She's got to be with a man. I guess that was the era back then. We wanted women to show that family side of themselves instead of that they could be independent and single. So
women can be anything as long as they have a man on their side. Right. Was kind of the message, right?
Right.
Which didn't sound like was Ruth's intention, but because of backlash from parents, Barbie can't be single.
Right. So
she's like, all right, well, here's Ken. But then what happens to Ken? And we see that in the movie. Mm-hmm. Ken doesn't even understand his purpose of being there.
No.
He's like, I'm here to do beach. I'm here because Barbie's here.
And for those that didn't see the movie, beach is what he thinks of as his job.
Right.
What is beach? He's not a lifeguard. He doesn't save people's lives in the water. No, he can't swim. So he beaches. So we don't know exactly what that is. It's never defined for us, but it doesn't really need to be because it's not anything that you can actually do.
Right. And it's just, you kind of get a sense of both Ken and Barbie in that movie are going through identity crisis. Mm-hmm. For different reasons. Ken doesn't understand his purpose.
Right.
Like, he just shows up and, Barbie kind of uses him as she wants to, and then she's like, all right, I'm done with you. You can go now.
Yeah, it's girls' night.
Wherever you're going to, I don't even know where you're going, but
right.
You filled your duty today. And then, Barbie starts having these feelings of, existential crisis and sets on this journey to the real world. To try to figure out what's happening, and has a whole nother crisis because she's thinking, but I was made so you can dream, and you can dream big, and you can
right.
do anything you want. And then she sees the real world and she's like, what the heck happened? I don't understand. I was
Right.
supposed to be this, and this is not what's happened in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at the beginning, Ken feels marginalized because he's in the Barbie world where Barbie is the one that's, I don't even know how to say it, maybe on top. She's the one that, the Barbies are the ones that run the show
Yeah,
because it's Barbie world. You know,
they're
it's
running
Barbie land.
everything.
And then in the real world, it's the opposite. And Barbie starts to feel marginalized. So, we talked earlier about trying to find a way that both people could feel like they're not being marginalized. And that's basically what I want to be included.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do on this podcast is to help people find a way to feel included and to feel part of society. We don't have the answers. We are figuring it out ourselves. And believe me, we don't know what we're doing. But we are figuring it out as we go along.
But I really liked, because I felt for both characters. I
Mhm.
felt for both Barbie and Ken, because they're both trying to find themselves and understand their purpose. Ken doesn't know what his is. Barbie thought she knew what her purpose was, then goes into the real world and finds out what she thought her purpose was is not what is going on.
Right.
So that's a big crisis to deal with. And most of us still deal with that, right? Whether you're a man or you're a woman, it's really hard sometimes to get your identity and figure out who you are. And that changes over time in life.
Mm-hmm.
Who you are at 20 is not who you are at 50.
Right.
We're learning that the hard way.
Right.
But that's a universal thing. It's not men versus women. Everybody's trying to find their identity, and society kind of puts these conditions in place that, well, you're a man, so you should do this, and you're a woman, so you should do that, or and sometimes that works for people, and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, then you have a crisis on your hands, because you're trying to figure out where you fit in, and it may go against what society is telling you is okay.
Yeah. The song that they use when Barbie is going into the real world when she's driving in her car, and this is in the trailer, so we're not giving anything away here, but it's Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls, which
awesome song.
Is one of my, yeah, exactly. They're one of my favorite bands, honest to goodness. I've been listening to their songs ever since I was a teenager. I've cried to their songs. I've danced. I've laughed. I've sung along with their songs. All their songs have some kind of hidden meaning, I'm sure. But this one, I love the lyrics in this song. And one of the verses I wanted to talk about today is, well, the darkness has a hunger that's insatiable, and lightness has a call that's hard to hear. And I wrapped my fear around me like a blanket. I sailed my ship of safety till I sank it. I'm crawling on your shores. And part of the chorus goes, there's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some answer to these questions, the less I seek my source, the closer I am to find. The closer I am to find. And I think that's such a neat song. It was obviously picked for a great purpose. The director, whoever picked it out, did a fantastic job picking that song, because it's ironic the fact that she's going to the real world to seek the answers. And the song's line is saying, and unless I seek my source for some answer,
Yeah.
the less we try to figure out what's going on and try to understand every single aspect of life, the closer I am to find. And that's what all of us really want, right? We just want to be closer to find. That's what all of us really want, to be closer to find.
Yeah. And I think it really was genius for them to use this song, because, again, this is a universal struggle for all of us, right? We tend to want to look for answers. Why is this happening? Why is this not happening? I don't understand what's going on. And I have been in that place in my life for sure. And when you get stuck on, well, why, you cannot move forward, and you can literally be stuck. And, it's interesting that the weird Barbie, who is also an awesome character.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we love that Barbie.
Because she existed in all our houses. Sends Barbie to the real world. She must kind of know what she's sending her off to, right?
I think so, yeah.
Like, she's like, you need to go. It's it's going to be a trip, but you need to go.
And Barbie's like, no, I picked the heel. I want the heel.
I know.
It's like the Matrix with that red pill. I think it's the one that you take if you don't want to remember everything in the blue pill, or I might have it confused. But she wants to take the heel.
Yeah.
And the wacky Barbie, or the
weird Barbie.
The weird Barbie is saying, you can't pick the heel. You're going to pick the Birkenstock or whatever those shoes are called.
But you can't blame Barbie, right? No. Because a lot of times you're like, but I know this. I'm comfortable with this. Right. I know who I am in this scenario. If I choose a different path and start to change, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what that's going to lead to. And that's scary. Yes. So that was a very, profound moment too. And I think a lot of us have felt that, well, I want to stay comfortable. That's the easier path, but that's not always the best path, or, that's not always the path that God has called you to be on just because you're comfortable and it feels easy.
Right.
Like you need to go, a different way and try something different and see what you're capable of. Is it going to be scary? Yes. It's going to be hard, probably. But, that doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it's bad at all.
No, you're right. It's a different life, but it's that need for clarity, but not trying to find some kind of definitive answer for everything. And I think the clarity is that we just have to accept that God is in control and find a way to make everything fine for ourselves and listen to who we are. And Barbie is trying to do that in this story by making the choices that she does make. And it's a great movie in that way, that it just helps us to see that there's so many different choices that we can take.
And you had brought this up too, that scene where when she first goes into the real world and she sees that older woman sitting at the bus stop and looks at her and says, "You're so beautiful." And the woman says, "Well, I know," which is awesome too.
That is awesome.
But, Barbie comes from a world where everybody's the same.
Right.
There's some differences there, but nothing changes in her world. It is the same day after day after day after day. And so for her to go to a world where things are very different, people are very different, you have different ages. In Barbie world, everybody's the same age. Poor Midge has been pregnant for how many decades? Poor funny. Woman. Not fair. That's fair. Like torture. And so to find a world where things are different, she just has a different lens. She's like, you are older, but oh my gosh, you're so beautiful because you're different and you're unique.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see that, Barbie has that perspective. It's great that towards the end of the movie, they find ways to kind of pull Barbie a little bit back into the world and kind of, also kind of connect with Ken and find some middle ground. And I think that's a good lesson as well, because it's very easy to be, pit against one another, whether it's a gender thing, whether it's, it can be anything. Right. And you can feel the struggles both Ken and Barbie are going through. And it really comes down to them listening to each other and being willing to see something a little bit different and change. Right. Which is scary. And you could see Barbie as she's thinking seriously about going back into that box and just magically going everything back to normal.
Right. She wants to take that pill and just
and man, I don't blame her.
No.
Just go back to what it was before. And that would have made her life better. It wouldn't have changed what's going on in the real world.
Right.
And once she saw that, she couldn't ignore that.
Right.
And so a lot of us live in these bubbles where we don't necessarily see what other people are dealing with and going through. We want to stay in our comfort zone. And I have definitely been guilty of that. And I've had my kids rip me out of it.
Your kids can do that. Yeah. What I was thinking about earlier was Barbie wakes up in the morning in the beginning of the movie and she's got the best day ever again. And it's again and again. And it's always the best day ever. So that's what makes the earth and the real world more interesting, I think, and more special, because not every day is going to be the best day ever. Not every, everybody you walk down the street and meet is not having the best day ever. Some of them are having the worst day of their life. And maybe tomorrow is going to be even worse than that.
Yeah.
But the neat thing is that, we can all kind of be kind to each other and help each other get through this. And that's what we are trying to do here on this podcast, is become a place where people can listen to people that are going through crisis and going through it again and again. And, a lot of these things that we go through do not end. They don't end. There's no end to grief. There's no end to chronic diseases or gender changes or things like that. There's no end to it. But we will all get through this together.
Exactly. And I love how that movie pulls generations of Barbies together.
Right.
They pull the original doll. They also pull in, poor Midge. They put in Alan, who's kind of, gone by the wayside historically. Even the weird Barbie, who's been abused and tossed aside. That
Right.
Most of these Barbies are like, you don't want to go there unless you have to. She's been marginalized because she's different, right? And so she's feeling that. And when you get to the end of the movie and you kind of see everyone coming together and recognizing that it's okay if you're different. It's okay that things aren't exactly the same, that, we're not exactly the same. It's okay that things have changed. That's very hard to accept sometimes in life.
It is.
But I think the movie did a really good job with that.
I think so too. And boy, there's so much to unpack about this movie. The idea, like we were talking about before, the dichotomy of what women have to go through as human beings, as people. We have to be this, but we also have to be that. You have to be hard, but you have to be soft. You have to be able to be a strong businesswoman, but you also have to be a nurturing mother at 2 a.m. when your kid is crying. And I've had nights where my daughter literally woke me up at 4 a.m, standing by the side of my bed, and then puked all over the floor.
Yep. It's part of the parenting experience.
Yeah. Who had to get up with the kid? Not my husband. It was me that got up with the child and called in sick to work that day and stayed home and cleaned up puke all day long and watched her get sick and sick. That was not fun.
No. And, I think too, and we had some fun just looking historically at some of these discontinued Barbies.
Right.
Or the Barbies that were controversial when they came out, and it's very telling that you have Midge, pregnant Midge.
Pregnant Midge was a discontinued
That was
Barbie
discontinued doll. Because, we don't want any girl to actually have to deal with reality.
It was part of the Happy Family series or something, and I guess they thought that's not a good idea.
Not so happy. You can't be pregnant. Babies disappear.
Right. They just come out of space.
They should have included a stork with the box. And then there's, growing up Skipper, which they're saying, oh, that sexualizes. Well, yeah, that's kind of what puberty does to girls. And I'm sorry if you can't deal with that, but whatever. But then their controversial Ken is that he got an earring. And that was a big deal in the 90s. So I think it's very telling that what women deal with and what men deal with are very different things.
Right.
I don't think one is more important than the other, or, one should be revered over the other. But historically, women get the short end of the stick. You have to deal with these things. Birth, you're changing bodies that you don't know how to deal with, what to do with. But we're not going to talk about it or do anything about it. You have to deal with it and magically get to a place where
it's okay.
You're an adult and magically everything's okay. And then you can be a wife and a mother and a career person, all this other stuff. And it's going to be beautiful, And then Ken's like, well, an earring?
Well, and how many guys didn't have long hair and earrings and wear makeup in the 80s? I mean, that was the era of hair bands.
And that was a whole music genre.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the guys that had the earrings were hot. I mean, that's what we thought as kids. He's so cute. He's got a little earring in his ear.
And all the poofy hair.
The poofy hair and the long hair. Yeah, you couldn't tell which one was the female.
Yeah. But I did appreciate that movie. I think there's a lot more there than people realize.
Mhm.
It's not just pro Barbie and anti Ken. That is not
No.
the message I got.
Mm.
It's, both are struggling for different reasons, but they both need to stop and look kind of at the other side, and they need to find their own place and
Right.
their own purpose, and not depend on somebody else to say, this is the box you should be in.
Right.
This is your purpose in life. We expect this of you. And a lot of people have dealt with that in society.
Right.
Men, women, whatever. A lot of people have been put in that box, and well, you do this because that's what's expected. Period. The end. People have been struggling with that for generations.
Well, speaking of boxes too, and getting back to the way we started with the conversation about the toys back then when we were growing up in the 80s were something that we used to fuel our imaginations, and we were able to become people that we normally were not through the Barbie dolls with our imaginations, and that was a great thing. Nowadays, with the kids having the iPods and the iPads and the this and that and the other and cell phones and whatnot, I remember a few years ago when my daughter was still young, I got her the Barbie dream house, the big, huge mansion of a house that Veronica and I both envied other children that could have. I thought she had it, and she thought that I had it, but I only had the townhouse because it was cheaper.
The dream house was like,
That was the
it was hanging from the ceiling in Toys R Us. That's how important it was. That's how big it was. Big, big price tag on it.
Yes, it did. Because even when I bought it a few years ago, it was so pretty expensive.
Yeah, definitely over $100, right?
Oh, yeah. And it took probably almost 2 hours to put the darn thing together. I did it while my daughter was at her father's one of the first Christmases that we had split after we got separated. And she came home in the morning. She was not as excited about it as I was, because when I got the box at my office, I literally ran up to the front and said, "It's got the flushing toilet. Look, I can show you. It's got the button right here." People were like, "Lisa, it makes a noise. It makes a noise." I'm like, "Yes, but it's the flushing toilet." And I am shaking my fists in excitement right now as I speak that, because it was the neatest thing ever. And my daughter was like, okay, she played with it for maybe 5 times.
Yeah.
And then she was bored with it.
Yeah.
And but she also started playing with Barbies when she was at 4. So maybe it's because I got to her when she was too old, because I think she was 8.
Yeah.
By the time I bought it, or 9.
I don't know. I think kids are just different, because I've dealt with that with my kids as well.
Yeah.
You buy them things, and half the time you're buying it because you're like, I would have loved this when I was a kid.
I wanted that.
Yes. And then they're like, okay, well, just add it to the pile, stick in the corner. I'll get to it eventually. They don't have the same like daily going in there and pulling out this one thing,
right,
and creating a whole world with it. They don't have that same experience.
Well, in kids, if we were kids today instead of back in the 80s, we probably wouldn't go to each other's house with duffel bags of stuff. We would maybe bring a computer.
Yeah.
Or a laptop.
Or just a phone. Phone
TV,
and
a cell phone.
iPods.
Yeah. So that's the difference too, I think, is that Barbie came out for us at a time that we were both craving something to help us with our imaginations and guide us into that kind of imaginary play that we got to experience.
Yeah. Barbie definitely helped create community, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because you could play with it by yourself, but you could also play with one other person, 2 other people, 3 other people, and everybody had different things. They had different dolls, different accessories.
Mm-hmm.
And that was great, because then you could create a world, and I've got a refrigerator, but hey, you've got a stove, or you've got a dining room table. Let's just make this big world. And that's what we did. We would take what we had together.
Yeah.
And create out of it.
Well, you literally did that.
Literally did that. Yes. So yeah, there was one summer I grew up in me and Lisa grew up in a subdivision. I had a house on a corner lot, which was a big front yard. Me and my 2 sisters all played with Barbie. And there was one summer day where I was like, we need to just have a big Barbie party. We have all these kids on our street. And so I made these handmade flyers and just walked up and down the street. And when I saw kids playing outside, like, hey, you got any Barbies? come to my house on this day at this time, bring your Barbie stuff. We're going to make a huge Barbie world. And that's what we did. You know, people just brought all their stuff and we all staked out our spots on the lawn and everyone just played with Barbie. And it didn't matter if you were 5, it didn't matter if you were 10, it didn't matter how much you had, which ones you had. Like, it just didn't matter. It was, you like to play with these things. You had the same
Right.
kind of imagination.
Right.
Let's just all come together and create this huge Barbie world and play together and imagine together. And I think kids miss out on that too.
Right.
There's just so much. Can you even imagine nowadays? My kids don't want to talk to anybody, let alone walk down the street. You know,
well, and you know, I mean, I grew up with a mom that would probably not let me do that even back then, let alone now. But now, it's certainly you would not. You don't have the sense of community. You don't have the sense of being able to let your kid walk around passing out flyers to people.
Right. Yeah.
So
that sounds very strange.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Barbie was many things to us, though, and she's many things to a lot of people. I said earlier, I don't think she's a symptom of a society, more of a reflection of it, because you know the women have always had this sense that we need to be skinny and thin and have no wrinkles, not even have any pores.
Yeah.
You know, we could go hours about that whole subject and body dysmorphia and thinking about yourself as not being beautiful. But I don't think we want to do that today because we want to keep it kind of light. But Barbie showed us that we can be anything. And we kind of blame her, though, for the idea that we have these images of women that are more than perfect. I mean, they're flawless. That's not the way women are. And I love the fact that the Barbie movie, like Veronica said earlier, shows us the scene with this older lady who knows that she's beautiful. When Barbie says, "You're beautiful," she goes, "I know."
Yeah.
You know, I've struggled with that all my life. When I was young and thin, I thought my thighs were fat. And of course, if you can fit into a size 4 pants, you do not have fat thighs. I'm sorry. If you think that you have fat thighs and you can fit into a size 4 pants, you don't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's, you know, and it's easy to point at something because we like to point at something and blame something. Well, it's Barbie's fault that was put out there. No, this has been going on for hundreds of years. This is way before Barbie.
Right.
Women going to great lengths and great pain sometimes to make themselves look a certain way. So this is not, you know, a blame Barbie moment. I don't think.
Not at all. No, we don't blame Barbie at all. We sympathize with her, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I remember the Jordache commercials when we were kids, with all the skinny models that were very, very small. And what I love to see today is that we have commercials now, like Old Navy will have commercials for jeans where they show women of all different sizes and shapes. And I think that's fantastic. My daughter went through the same kind of thought processes that I did as a teenager when she thought she was too overweight, and she was not overweight. She was wearing like a size 4 as well. And I struggled to try to find ways of showing her and telling her it's society's fault that you feel like that. It's not your fault. You are not too big. We all have to find a way of accepting who we are and what we look like for who we are. You know, you've got to find a way of being healthy and accepting yourself.
Yeah. And how many of our kids still struggle with that?
Right.
You know, it's like a cycle that we desperately need to break, that's been going on for generations and generations. Because our kids, we want to blame social media, we want to blame lots of things. At the end of the day, a lot of their struggles are the same things we went through. It's the same things our moms went through and their moms went through. You know, this idea that you have to look a certain way, that you're not beautiful enough, that you're not good enough, that you can only be these certain things. That's been going on for a long time. I would love if we could have conversations about how do we break that for our kids, you know?
Right. When my daughter was young, and she was, one summer, she was about 120 pounds, and she wanted to lose 40 pounds in a summer. And I said, if you lose 40 pounds in a summer, you will die because you will be so skinny that at about 5'2", she should be 80 pounds. I mean,
Right.
that would have been horrifying. It would have been
Yeah.
horrific. So I sent her an email because she was living with her father at the time. Long story. I think I've gone into that in my other episodes. And I sent her an email and I said to her, "You are beautiful, no matter what kind of size you are, what kind of shape you are. I love you for your heart. I love you for your soul. I love you for who you are. And you're always beautiful to me. You'll always be beautiful to me." But I also sent her some videos that show, Kate Winslet, for example, was on the cover of one of those magazines. And she was upset with how much they airbrushed her picture.
Yeah.
Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "I don't even look like that."
Yeah.
And that was her.
That was not me.
That was not her, but it was her.
Right.
So that's the kind of society I think that we are dealing with kids and with ourselves. I mean, now I'm much bigger than I was back when I thought I was fat as a teenager. And I'm trying to still tell myself that I am okay.
Yeah.
That I'm closer to fine.
I love how in the Barbie movie too that they used actresses of all shapes and sizes and skin color, and I love the diversity
Yeah.
that they made with that, because I don't think that was an accident either. Barbie can be anything. We think of Barbie as this certain dimensional figure, but we can make Barbie anything. Barbie can be any size, whatever hair. Barbie can be whatever. Barbie can be a factory worker. Barbie can be a CEO. Whatever
or she
she
can have
wants.
pretty dresses.
Right. And so I love that. And even with the Ken dolls, they made that some diversity too, right? It wasn't just a white Ken with dark hair, which is kind of what I grew up with.
Right.
They diversified Ken. And so I do think it's good for kids to see, like, it can be a lot of things, and you can be a lot of things, and you can be beautiful and, successful regardless of what size you are. That doesn't matter.
Well, it matters what's inside your body, right? Not the outside shell of your body. And I think that's the reason why, Barbie is really interested in the real world and going into that real world instead of going back into her dream world of Barbie land, because she wants to explore being real, being human. And that's the diversity that is what makes it so interesting in the real world, right?
Yeah. It's those imperfections. And we talked about why Barbie chooses the real world, because part of you think, like, why would you do that?
Right.
That seems crazy to me. Why would you choose that? But she is drawn to the imperfections. She's drawn to the diversity. She's drawn to the change that comes with being part of the real world.
Right. And that shows too that even having the best day ever, every day of your life is not anything I think that anybody would want to go through for the rest of their life. I mean, It would be great, sure, for maybe a few weeks, like a vacation, let's vacation in Barbie land, but let's come back to the real world when we get done with that, right? When we get bored of that, and we always know that we don't know what to expect out there, and we can't try, like I said, like the song Closer to Fine says, we can't be looking for our source for some definitive to our source for some definitive. We have to be closer to fine by being less in control.
Yeah.
And I think that's what also, defines the Christian faith, defines our lives as Christians, as we look for God to help guide us in this life instead of trying to find the control and the definitive and the answers.
Yeah. And so the irony of this song is that when you start letting go of obsessed with why and wanting to be in control of everything, that's when you are really more fine. Because control is an illusion.
It is. Definitely an illusion.
We like to feel we have it. I gave up on it because it was just easier to say, you know what? I'm not in control. It was actually easier for me to go down that road at a certain point.
Right.
And so to be closer to fine is to get to this level of understanding, like, God's in control. I'm not going to understand everything. I'm not going to know everything. And that's okay. And I can be okay like that because somebody else is in control. So I I truly love that they use this. And it's also the other song they used by Matchbox 20 was also really cool for Ken.
Right.
That's another song that I've always liked.
Push by Matchbox 20. That was a good song too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this song, an abusive relationship that he was in, Rob was in a relationship with a woman who was kind of emotionally abusive.
Okay.
And so these lyrics were a reflection of that. And so I think, it's trying to give Ken a voice, right? When Ken gets a song, he's starting to find his voice.
Right.
And starting to speak for himself, like, you know what? It's not okay. Like I am hurting and I'm struggling, just coming here over and over again and trying to give you what you want and be who you want me to be. I can't do it anymore. It's not okay. And his struggles are just as valid as Barbie's.
They are, yeah, and we can't. They are. We function in a better, yes, they are. We function in a society better, I think, when people feel like they're not being marginalized, and we accept everybody, and that's hard to do. And you have to make the choice for yourself. You can't make the choice for everybody else. Unfortunately, we can't make everybody think the same way we think, or else we'd be in Barbie world.
Right. Yes.
So I believe that Ken is finding his voice, like you said, and he is trying to find a way. He takes over Barbie Land for a while. We're sorry, we're giving the movie away. I know. He takes over Barbie World. I keep calling it Land. I don't know why. It's the whole Disney World thing. There's Disneyland and Disney World. And where
California people.
Yeah, California people have Disneyland. So he wants to take over Barbie World and make it Ken World, basically, which works for him for a little while until they both realize that it's not working for both of them. Yeah. And what works better for me is what also works for the people around me. So I think that that's a takeaway from the movie as well, that society works better when we all work together to make it work versus trying to make it work for just us.
Yeah. And it's very a reflection of society in general, because we tend to swing back and forth.
Right.
It goes one way and people get really scared and they want to go totally the opposite way.
Right.
We kind of do this dramatic shift back and forth.
Always.
And no one's stopping to just listen to the people in the middle and find out, how we can change to make everyone feel like they're included, that they have a place, regardless of where they are in life or what their background is or what their ethnicity is or any of those things that we use to define people.
Right.
We don't need the extremes. We don't need this one person or this one group of people calling all the shots and making all the decisions, and everyone else just has to deal with it. That's not good on any end, no matter who's on top making the decisions.
Right. So, yeah, I guess the moral of the story is watch the movie. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it already, we're sorry we gave away some stuff, but it's a great movie. You're going to love it. And it's great if you love Barbies. It's great if you hate Barbies, because there's some good stuff about them both ways. And they bring in Ruth Handler. They bring in Ruth Handler and they show us how Barbie got created and why she got created. And I think why she got created was a great thing. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun from a retro standpoint, just kind of reliving some of our childhood, and we've spent time on Pinterest kind of browsing through the old ads and, hey, that looks familiar. We had that. But it also has a lot of good messaging in there. And so I feel like that makes it definitely worth watching and thinking about and giving some thought to. So
great way to spend an afternoon with a good friend.
Absolutely.
Best friends.
It was. Yes, it was. I agree. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed reminiscing about Barbie as much as we did. Hang in there. We're all doing the best we can. Have a good week.